Alexander the Great didn't fail because he wanted too much. He failed because three small screws rattled loose: succession, audits, logistics. Not destiny, not hubris, hardware. Tighten them, and the map stops shaking. Dawn unbuttons Babylon, one hinge at a time. A river barge bumps the quay. A crane's rope groans. Oil lamps gutter in the administrative quarter, where the city wakes earlier than soldiers do. You feel the kiln heat in the brick corridors, the dust of baked clay on your tongue, the sweet metal smell of coin. A clerk rubs his eyes above a wooden tablet, lines of numbers cut into wax like furrows after rain. Reads stylus, tap, tap, tap. He lifts a scale, sets a tetradrachm on one pan, dusts the other with fine sand, breath held. The weights settle, then wobble. His columns don't match. Behind him, a scribe rolls a cylinder seal across damp clay. A bull, a lion, a king's eye. Somewhere outside, a barge master shouts, "Open the gate!" This is not the theater of empire. This is its pulse. Schedules, not speeches. The clerk stares at a deficit the size of a grain barge. Soldiers to be paid, grain to be counted. A convoy overdue on the road from Susa. He knows what every empire learns too late. Delay is rebellion's first drummer. We tell ourselves Alexander's engine burned out at the edge of the world. Listen closer to the tick. He had conquered faster than his ledgers could breathe. Officers bristled at Persian robes and Persian titles. Coin flowed like a river in flood, then braided into rivulets no one tracked. When the king died without a clear, binding edict, loyalty became an auction, not epic tragedy, procurement failure. So here is the promise, and it is small. A written succession and a 5-seat regency that cannot deadlock. A dual-key satrapy that splits civil revenue from the sword and rotates the keys. A spine of veteran colonies and caravan posts that shortens risk, backed by a literal squadron that turns the sea into a moving tax office. A bilingual bureaucracy that buys legitimacy for less than the price of a revolt. A cash flow calendar that pays on time, every time. Small screws, giant consequences. Picture the clerk again. He dips the stylus and redraws a column, this time with a rule the whole empire can obey. The weight steadies, the lamp burns steadier too. Outside, the river carries new orders stamped in clay, bound for satraps who know they will be audited by men they don't command. A messenger sprints past with dust in his teeth because a drumbeat has changed. Payday won't slip. You will hear of mutinies that began as payroll problems, of weddings meant as policy, of a fleet that already proved the shoreline could be a road. You will meet a raider who thrived on long supply lines, and a paymaster who learned fear has a calendar. And you will see how a handful of fixes, nothing mystical, convert charisma into institutions that outlive the man who gave them breath. If we get this right, the decade ahead is not a fanfare, but a metronome. Babylon counting, Susa banking, roads watched by men with farms to lose, harbors patrolled by crews who answer to coin as much as to glory. The drama is quieter until the moment it isn't, because every schedule is a promise and every promise invites a test. Stay with me. Walk the alleys where heat lifts off clay like sighs. Put your ear to the ledger and hear the faint tick of order returning. This story is not about conquering one more province. It's about conquering drift. It's not about speeches. It's about receipts. And if that sounds unromantic, remember, the romance of endurance is made from such iron filings. Before we tighten the first screw, a quick invitation. Subscribe to What If Wars. If this kind of counterfactual, grounded, granular, human speaks to you, you'll want the full timeline and the next episode's waiting when you wake. Because when we rethread this machine, the sound it makes is addictive. Coin on scale, seal on clay, boots on time. Empires survive on schedules. Let's build one. The common telling says, Alexander flew too close to the sun, but heat didn't kill the empire. Friction did. Status rubbed raw, pay rubbed late, loyalties rubbed thin until they smoked. Listen at Opis. The air is river wet and metallic with coin dust. Veterans, scar-laced and sunburned, crowd a parade ground beside the Tigris, waiting for discharge gifts they feel they've already earned. New Persian officers in bright robes stand a fraction too near the royal pavilion. A Macedonian file leader mutters, "We bled for this," and the murmur becomes a shove, then a roar. Spears drum shields, not for war, for acknowledgement. In the middle of it, pay, precedence, the insult of being told the army is now bigger than the men who built it. When the king's words arrive sharp, the hurt explodes into a human thing, not ideology, but dignity with a ledger attached. That is the hinge. We imagine empires collapse from distant pressure. Reveal, they first crack inside the officer corps, where vanity meets arithmetic. Commanders measure their place by proximity and purse, whose title was raised, whose stipend delayed, who now shares a table with Persian grandees. The line between loyalty and grievance is a payday long. If the king's charisma is the only glue, one fever breaks the jar. Indecision punishes an empire stretched thin. Walk the board fast, from Pella's damp breezes to Babylon's kiln breath, then east along canals to Susa's vaults, up into the dry light of Ecbatana and farther, over steppes and stony rivers, toward Bactria and Maracanda, where winter bites the fingers that hold the quill. Each segment has its own clock. A missed dispatch in Babylon becomes a month of rumor in Sogdiana, and rumor buys men with promises coin should have kept. Strip the myth to moving parts. Hubris is an unhelpful word for a payroll that slips 8 days. Overreach is a story we tell when our maps hide the caravans that never arrived. The Opis riot wasn't philosophy. It was a price signal. We don't know where we stand. Pay us, place us, or we will place ourselves. The king could shame, plead, or punish, but without a rulebook bigger than his breath, every fix was temporary. An embrace today, a sullen camp tomorrow. The officer corps, meanwhile, is a market. Promotion is currency. So is the right to skim a little from the satrapy's flow. So is the invitation to the council, where Persian silk now rustles beside Macedonian leather. If you want to see the fracture line, watch the eyes when a Persian noble is handed the seal for civil revenue while a Macedonian keeps the sword. Pride can swallow policy if policy explains itself in regular, audited numbers. Pride eats men alive when the numbers arrive late, or not at all. This is why we break the cliché. Overreach didn't doom the structure. Delay did. Distance didn't decide. Indecision did. The empire's edge was sharp. The core was soft where it mattered. A schedule anyone could trust. Think of the Opis ground as a ledger in the open air. It balanced only when the king himself stood on the column, marked credibility. Remove him, and the column lists. So we tighten the screws in the order they loosened. First legitimacy among those who carry orders to the borders. Then the audits that keep their hands clean without humiliating them. Then the logistics that make promises keep time. Strip the hymn, tune the metronome, the music will play. Unroll the map on a table still warm from last night's lamps. It curls at the edges like a sleeping animal. Your hand smooths the grain. Pella's damp breezes in one corner, the Nile's green ribbon in another, then the baked brick of Babylon in the middle, and far to the northeast, a tangle of pale rivers and hard names. Bactria, Maracanda, the Oxus, and the Jaxartes, where the margins cut back. Start in Babylon, where canals stitch the plain to Susa's vaults. Grain can float there. Coin can ride in sealed chests under reed mats. With enough boats and a calendar that keeps its promises, this heartland hums. But the arteries that run east do not hum, they rasp. Ecbatana sits higher, colder. Past it the road lifts into long light and thin air. Horse lungs burn, hoof iron wears fast. Then the land breaks into rivers with cruel moods. Bridges turn to ferries, ferries to fords, fords to risks. Every segment lengthens the empire's shadow and shortens its temper. Now fix your eye on the Bactria-Sogdiana corridor, the empire's narrowest throat. Spidomenes learned to live there like a hand at a man's windpipe. He didn't need to defeat armies, he needed to tax distance. He rode the margins, cutting scouts, tasting the wind for caravans, burning a relay here, a storehouse there, making each convoy imagine itself alone. Garrisons were left as dots the map could not connect without escorts, and escorts bled time and grain to guard freight that could have fed them twice over at home. Overstretch is not poetry. It's arithmetic with spears. Walk into a garrison north of the Oxus at dusk. The wind smells of dust and copper. A quartermaster fingers a tally stick smoothed by 100 anxieties. He counts out barley measures onto a blanket, then counts again because the caravan from Bactria is 2 days late. The men eat in silence, pretending the porridge is thicker than it is. A sergeant folds a letter from his brother, a farm near Amphipolis, and tucks it under his belt. He does the math. At this rate, the meat ration dwindles in 3 nights. Everyone looks at the road and doesn't say the same sentence out loud. One missed convoy away from revolt. Distance punishes indecision. The king can decree generosity in Babylon. The frontier hears only the footfall of mules. Spitamenes gambled that delay would do the work of 1,000 arrows. When a convoy arrives late, rumors arrive early. Rumor is a currency all its own. It buys desertions wholesale. Turn from geography to money. The empire breathes in silver stamped to the Attic weight. Familiar faces, owl, helmet, diadem, reassuring in your palm. Coin is not wealth, it is speed. It makes promises portable, shrinks argument, settles tempers. Under Alexander, silver poured from captured treasuries in the flood. Paymasters learned to count quickly. Smiths learned to clip and weight and seal. And then the flood slackened, because conquest pauses even for conquerors. When the inflow slows, the coin's job changes. It must be earned, not found. A treasury built on seizures needs to become a treasury built on schedules. Land tax, market tolls, customs at river mouths, predictable enough that men plan their marriages and merchants plan their credit. What happens when coin inflows stall? You feel it first in the pitch of voices. A paymaster delays 3 days and offers promises instead of drachmas. Men who have seen death cheap attach a higher price to delay. Satraps, some honest, some not, bridge the gap by borrowing from local revenues, confident that audits are rare and punishments negotiable. The coin itself degrades without changing metal. It loses rhythm. And rhythm is what kept the Opis parade ground calm until it didn't. Men are the third constraint, and they carry the first 2 on their backs. The veterans are rich in scars and poor in patience. New recruits, Thracians, Persians, Greeks of the cities, jostle intents that mix languages and habits. A Persian scribe can record a tribute roll faster than a Macedonian captain can read it. A Macedonian captain can seize a ford faster than a Persian noble can convene a council. They need each other, but pride resists. Legitimacy is the cheapest pay if you can afford it. Respect shown in quotas and titles, in the right to keep local law, in the notice that an Aramaic petition will be read as faithfully as a Greek one. Time is the last constraint and the most pitiless. Seasons are laws you can't amend. In spring, the roads eschew carts to timber and spit them back as ruts. In summer, men drink their discipline. In winter, passes close, and the empire holds its breath. Every promise must find its season. Taxes assessed when fields are visible, coin minted when grain fills the jars, convoys sent when rivers behave, audits sprung when complacency promises a catch. If you miss time even one of these, the calendar takes its revenge in kind. Return to the garrison at dusk. A rider appears on the road, one man far ahead of his company, horse lathered white. He slides from the saddle, staggers, and holds up a sealed tablet slick with sweat. The quartermaster breaks the clay with a fingernail. The convoy is a day behind him, a bridge washed downstream, a new ford found with a price. Men's shoulders drop a fraction. Relief is noisy for 10 heartbeats, then quiet again, because tomorrow will ask the same question. The ration line moves, bowls scrape. A sentry resets an hourglass made of sand and habit. This is the chessboard, corridors that can be strangled by one cunning raider. Coin that must become a timetable. Men whose pride can be hired cheap with honor, but dearly with neglect. A year that punishes optimism. The fixes we will choose are not heroic. They are clocks and locks. Make the schedule audible to the farthest watchtower. Make the lock require 2 hands to turn. Make the sea a road, not a moat. If the map is going to hold, the calendar must become a weapon. Begin at a low table in Babylon. Night air presses through reed shutters, warm and smelling of river mud and oil. A lamp draws a cone of light over papyrus and wax. The king's signet lies beside a bowl of clean water. A chief scribe waits with a reed cut, fine enough to split a hair. Outside, the city moves like a tide, carts settling, dogs arguing, a barge chain clinking in a slow, tidal rhythm. Inside, everything holds its breath for a sentence that will outlive the man who speaks it. The edict is simple enough to memorize and heavy enough to anchor an army. The heir is named, without riddles or theatrical pauses. The son within Roxana's belly recognized as first in line, with Philip Aridaeus acknowledged as co-sovereign in name only. A figure to honor blood, while authority flows through one conduit. Until the child can ride and reckon, a regency of 5 runs the empire's pulse with rules that even enemies can predict. Seat 1 carries Europe and its garrisons. And to Peter, the old hinge on which Macedonia still swings. He keeps Pella quiet, watches Thrace, minds the kingship's native hearth. Seat 2 owns the army's back, transport, rations, roads, Craterus, who knows how many carts break on a bad hill and how many oaths crack when pay slips. Seat 3 is the sword in the field, a Macedonian trusted by the ranks to be exact and unsentimental. Call him the spear hand, answerable for campaign tempo and frontier fires. Seat 4 is a Persian grandee, custodian of civil revenue, fluent in the habits of satraps and the mathematics of harvests. The face that assures nobles from Susa to Ecbatana that the throne respects their law. Seat 5 is the chief scribe, master of records and seals, who reads the empire to itself and, when memory quarrels, decides what the law meant yesterday. They meet on fixed days, in a room with no shadows to hide in, door warded by men who answer to none of them. Each carries a seal that can start nothing alone. 2 signatures move soldiers, 2 different signatures move money. Only when all 3 domains, sword, purse, record, agree does a new war begin. They cannot deadlock by design. If votes split, a tie-break lives in the edict. The scribe opens a cedar coffer and reads last quarter's revenues and stores. If coin and grain sit below the threshold, the council must choose the cheaper course, consolidate, audit, pay, until the line climbs. If the measure rises above the mark, the spear hand earns freedom to act in the field within preset bounds. The rule is arithmetic, not thunder. Men who hate each other can obey a number. Oaths bind the parts that ink cannot reach. In the Asagila, beneath the god's glassy stare, each regent lays his right hand on a bronze sword and his left on a clay tablet stamped with his own seal. They swear by their children and their dead, and they do not swear alone. Each places a hostage into the council's keeping, a nephew, a son, a brother, whose comfort depends on the treasury paying soldiers on time, and the council keeping one voice in public. The oath cuts both ways. Harm a hostage, and every stipend dies with him. Keep the oath, and the hostages grow fat and bored and unremarkable. Fear can hold men still. This trades on love. The edict buys loyalty with math. Counselors draw fixed stipends and a bonus no one can skim. A share of verified surplus after audits, paid in coin struck to weight at the Babylon Mint. And, for prudence, in long lease parcels of crown land near roads, their policies must keep open. If revenues fall short in 2 successive quarters, their stipends shrink by rule. No arguments, no gifts behind curtains. The empire's praise or blame arrives like weather. Now carve the cost into a memory. Ecbatana, high and dry, a blue day cut with mountain wind. Hephaestion is gone. Grief makes the king enormous and then very small. Messenger lines snarl while mourning outruns policy. Officers wait for signals that don't come, or arrive wrapped in black. Decisions that should have taken 1 hour take 8. A frontier smolders where a sentence would have smothered it. That delay is the shape of an unmade edict. Imagine the same blow under this rule. The king collapses in Babylon. The lamp gutters. The scribe's hand shakes and then steadies. The coffer opens, sealed witness to yesterday's totals. The council convenes by the calendar that cannot be interrupted even by death. Orders leave before rumors arrive. Antipater keeps Europe quiet because the edict gives him exactly that job. Craterus moves grain and pay toward the edges because that is the marching order that buys 3 months of calm. The spearhand logs patrols and arrests improvisation that smells like civil war. The Persian grandee unrolls tax registers and speaks to nobles in their own law. The scribe records, publishes, makes it all legible. The column marked credibility no longer depends on a heartbeat. This is the third reveal. Clear succession cuts the price of loyalty. Men do not become saints. They become cheap to keep. Officers bargain less when the table has no wobble. Satraps steal less when they expect strangers to crack their seals without warning. Veterans grumble but do not stray when their discharge gifts feel certain again. The empire does not care whom they love, only whether the calendar and the chain of command meet on the same page. In the morning, the edict dries hard as tile. The signet bites. A runner takes the first copy to the mint, another to Susa, a third to the harbor, where ships sit ready with full water jars. The council rises, tired and oddly light, and the city resumes its steady clink. Coin on scale, seal on clay, boots on time. The throne is now a schedule with 5 chairs bolted to it. Open the door at Susa. The morning is cool and smells of clay jars and sesame oil. A line of scribes waits in the corridor, tablet strings looped over their wrists like rosaries. Behind the heavy cedar, wax seals shine on a chest the size of a mule. A satrap sits very straight, palms flat on the table, breathing as if breath itself might count against him. 2 men face him who do not belong to his household. One wears a plain cloak with a narrow purple band, the civil auditor. The other's cloak is dusted from the road and cut for riding, the military inspector. 2 keys, 2 domains. Neither key turns alone. This is the rule written after the succession edict dries. Every satrapy is split in function, not in quarrel. A civil governor, often Persian, trained in land registers, harvest calendars, and the ordinary courts, owns the revenue river, taxes and grain and coin, market tolls, customs at ferries and gates, contracts for storage and transport, the appointment of local scribes. A military commander, often Macedonian, fluent in garrisons, patrol schedules, and siege craft, owns the sword, troop dispositions, frontier patrols, escort assignments, requisitions under emergency seal. They can read each other's figures but cannot move each other's assets. The civil governor cannot order a cohort into the hills without a co-signed writ. The military commander cannot touch the tax chest without the civil seal. Extraordinary orders, new fort, new levy, new campaign, require both signatures and a dispatch to Babylon within 3 days. 2 keys to the same chest, 2 hands on the same lock. Tenure ends before roots grow deep. 3-year rotations by law. The civil governor of Susa moves to Sardis. The commander at Sardis rides to Ecbatana. Susa receives a new pair who know no cousins here. The household that might have become a little kingdom is scattered before it learns the trick. Between rotations, leave is staggered and brief. The intent is not cruelty. It is hygiene. This system breathes only if the air is watched. Enter the roving inspectors, a corps neither civil nor military, but married to records. Men and a few iron-nerved women raised in temple schools and royal chancelleries, loyal to the schedule itself. They travel unannounced with small escorts, carrying scales, coin dies, moisture sticks for testing grain, and, most feared, lists of numbered tablets that should exist if taxes were collected as claimed. Every ledger in the empire is now triple. 1 copy for the satrapy, 1 sealed and sent monthly to Babylon, 1 held by the auditors. Missing numbers mean missing truth. The Susa chest opens with a crack. Wax flakes like dry snow. The civil auditor weighs silver to the attic standard, recording each batch by mint mark and assayer's stamp. The military inspector checks escort logs and forage accounts against road watch tallies and stable records. The satrap's underscribe swallows when the traveling auditor asks for the grain by moisture list. Jars tested by the reed stick at harvest and again in storage. How much shrank by honest loss? How much by hungry rat? How much by dishonest hand? The numbers sing, the auditors listen for notes that do not belong. Confiscation rules live on a tablet at the top of every chest. If skimming breaches the permitted slippage, or if ledgers are falsified with intent, the estate of the guilty is seized in parts, not with a theatrical sweep, but in an order that repairs trust. First, restitution to troops unpaid. Second, arrears to the crown. Third, compensation to local plaintiffs. Only then the penalty pool that pays the auditors their fixed modest reward. To kill perverse incentives, the auditor's bonus is capped and audited a second time by strangers. Denunciations are rewarded only when numbers confirm them. Malice earns its own fine. The satrap in Susa coughs once, then remembers that sound can be taken for guilt and falls very quiet. A wax tablet emerges from a drawer that should hold no ledgers. The military inspector sets it in the light, reads forage purchased for escorts that never rode, hay stacked at a fort that never existed. The civil auditor lifts a coin and finds its edge nicked. A shaving so delicate a lesser scale would not mind it. He notes the exact weight loss and reads the name of the mint slave who struck the batch. A runner leaves the room with that name and a folded order to seize a warehouse by the river. The satrap's skin shines. He watches the keys move that are not his. Punishment is not a spectacle. It is a calendar adjustment. The stolen silver walks out under guard toward the paymaster's table, where it becomes payday on time for a battalion that has waited 8 days too long. Helmets tilt back, shoulders drop, anger dissolves like salt in water. A rumor that might have blossomed into desertion shrivels before it gets a horse. The fort does not grow thicker walls. It grows a thicker routine. This is the lesson hammered until it leaves a dent. Paydays on time are a form of fortification. The two-key rule has a cost. Pride chafes. A commander learns to ask for carts he once would have seized. A governor learns to publish numbers he once would have whispered. The 3-year rotation offends wives and uncles, but the friction is cheaper than revolt. It turns personal ambition into institutional caution. The raider who taxes distance, the officer who weighs grievance, the merchant who times his caravan, all begin to believe the empire will act like its own rules. By dusk, the Susa audit closes. Seals press new wax with the same old bull and lion. The satrap signs again with a hand that shakes less. Outside, in the shadow of the treasury wall, a soldier counts silver into his belt and laughs once, short and loud, like a man who has chosen to stay another year. The auditors ride at dawn toward the next chest with the same narrow band on their cloaks and the same habit of arriving a day early. Somewhere on the road, a rumor mislays itself and never arrives. Take the roads in your hands like reins. Feel how they pull. Every convoy east drags fear behind it like a long shadow. We cut that shadow into pieces small enough for one lantern to chase away. The policy looks plain on clay. Along the empire's spine, Damascus to Thapsacus, down to Babylon and Susa, up to Ecbatana, then out through Rahage to Bactria and Maraconda, establish fortified poles every 300-400 kilometers, each a stout dot on the map, with smaller postal relays strung between like beads. The poles are not cities, they are machines. A square tower, a ditch that drinks rain the right way, a granary, a smithy, a clinic-sized shrine, a counting room with a scale to the attic weight, a fenced corral, and a yard where wheels can be fixed without stealing a whole day. Around each pole, veteran colonies on land grants, men who have bled enough to love quiet. The grants buy 3 things at once. First, a road crew with reasons. Colonists must maintain a stretch of road and the drainage ditches that keep it from becoming a canal in spring. Second, a muster. Every veteran owes 10 days a season to patrols that never wander far, just far enough to make raiders guess. Third, hostages of hope. Wives, orchards, little graves, assets that cannot move, that make running less attractive than standing. Watch the plan take ground. A surveyor plants a reed where 2 soils meet. Gravel that doesn't drink and loam, that does. He listens to the wind and points. Ditch there, windbreak here, tower door away from the prevailing gust. A line of oxen hauls stones. The smell is chalk and sweat. Now the anecdote that matters because it is small. A retired high paspist, scar white on his jaw, knee that clicks when he kneels, stands with a dozen settlers holding shovels like lances. He squints at the sun. Here, he says, and with the toe of his sandal scuffs a shallow channel where no one else saw a slope. If the ditch runs that way, the spring flood eats your wall. He kneels, knee clicking, and shows them how to lay the first row of mud brick so the tower does not twist as it dries. Children carry water. A woman laughs when the wind throws her hair into wet clay. The ditch starts shallow, then deepens, then shines with slow water that can't climb where it shouldn't. This is policy having knuckles. Between the poles, the relay beads. Way stations every hard day's ride, with a fresh horse, a measure of barley, a jar of water sealed by a mark the auditors know. A courier rides in, swings down, calls his name and the code of the week, and is out again in the time it takes to wipe sweat from the bit. Messages that once took 10 days take 6. Orders outrun rumor. Rumor loses a hoof. At the river crossings, the Euphrates, the Tigris side channels, the Gindis, the Oxus, the poles anchor standardized ferries and, where possible, pontoon kits locked in boathouses with double seals. The ferryman isn't a bandit with a rope. He is a franchise holder with a ledger, crown rates posted on a clay plaque, tolls remitted monthly, audits that sniff at every coil of rope. A caravan commander no longer haggles with a man who can strand him. He presents a stamped token, and the boat moves. The caravanserai ring each pole like commas. Low courtyards where camels cough and men snore. A tax nook where a clerk checks bales by tally stick and not by whim. A pen where flocks sleep under the eyes of boys who whistle softly in dialects the officer doesn't know, but the policy does. Bakers rise in the dark. The first bread breaks when the stars are still white. A blacksmith leans his forehead against a wheel rim and listens for the note that means true. The place smells of wet leather, ash, and cumin. In the counting room, the scale is bored with being right. The incentive spine stiffens everything. Colonists receive their parcels free of first levy, then pay low and predictable dues tied to the harvest calendar they can see in their own fields. In return, they keep a ready kit. 2 days' grain, 2 repaired spears, 1 sling, a pair of sandals with fresh hobnails, and they answer a horn that never blows without pay following it. The escort market changes. Instead of hiring 100 men to push through a lawless span, a merchant pays a regulated fee to the pole, and the garrison assigns 10 with fresh feet to ride the next segment, and only the next. Raiding becomes local risk, not empire-wide roulette. Spitamines feels it first, like weather. He rides down from a lip of hill to the old ford, and finds it guarded by men who live here, faces he has seen in the market at planting time, men who know the names of the shepherds he would impress and the wells he would poison. He cuts east to a road that once vanished into scrub, and finds wheel ruts punished smooth by regular repair. He burns a relay and discovers the message he hoped to stop reached the pole yesterday. He is still dangerous, but the wrist tail of his danger has been shortened, lopped clean like a frayed rope. He must spend more to achieve less. Costs shift, choices follow. There are prices to pay. A pole means a skirmish the first year, a grave under a small pile of stones, a widow who learns to read numbers because she will not eat otherwise. A colony fails where a spring lies to the surveyor. A stretch of road disappears under a landslip and must be moved a mile north at twice the expected labor. The empire bears these as setup costs, not as proof of futility, because each success makes the next cheaper. Then the fourth reveal, bare and satisfying. Distance shrinks when incentives settle, not because mountains move or deserts soften, but because men choose to stay where they would have fled and to cooperate where they would have cheated. The veteran who digs the ditch is not a romantic figure. He is a ledger entry made flesh, his sweat accrued against future escorts, his orchard against future mutinies. He teaches a boy to set hobnails in a straight line. He leans on his spade and listens to the road. It sounds like a promise kept. By year's end, the poles mark the map like stitching. Caravans travel with smaller guards and tighter schedules. Garrison commanders sleep better because their patrols are short and regular, not long and heroic. Merchants learn the timetable well enough to risk credit. The clerk in Babylon runs a finger along a column that no longer stutters. And somewhere east, in a fort whose ditch drains the right way, a child counts the hoofbeats of an escort that arrives exactly on the day the horn said it would. Night lowers over the Persian Gulf like a lid. The water smells of tar and warm salt. You crouch under a low sail on a patrol cutter. Shallow draft, fast oars. a bronze beak that gleams when the moon escapes cloud. Nearchus proved this coastline is a road if you learn its moods. Now the road gets mileposts and toll houses that float. The squadron is small and regular, pairs of cutters leapfrogging from harbor to harbor, signal fires prearranged on spits and islands, a weekly patrol rhythm posted like a calendar. Each crew carries an inspector who can read ledgers and a bosun who can read weather. Their orders are narrow and relentless. Map coves, count sails, make night boarding a habit men tell stories about. The sea becomes a ledger you can patrol. At the river mouths, Euphrates, Tigris channels, the mouths that drain Elam and Susiana, the Crown builds customs depots on pilings, warehouses raised above the damp, scales hung from rafters stiff with salt. Rates are posted on clay in characters a Phoenician can sound out, an Aramaic clerk can love, a Greek can mutter at but obey. The depots do not haggle. They stamp, they weigh, they record, and they remand disputes to dawn when tempers and numbers settle together. Beside each depot, a harbor credit office no bigger than a chapel. A merchant lays a palm on the counter, worn smooth by hundreds like him. He can pledge cargo as collateral and receive a stamped tablet, a traveling promise, redeemable at the next depot. Interest is modest, capped, and printed. Repayment is enforced by the same routines that guard pay chests ashore. This keeps caravans moving and hulls laden when coin is between towns, and it kills the old temptation to bribe a sleepy tidewatch for speed. Speed is now for sale in daylight at one price for all. Back to the cutter. A shadow slides off a mangrove bank, low hull, lateen that should have been furled an hour ago. The patrol's coxswain lifts 2 fingers. Oars ship without a clack. A grapnel kisses the smuggler's gunwale and bites. The patrolman beside you smells of fish oil and iron. He counts silently, 1 to 5, and then you are over the rail together. A lantern flares, shielded with a hand. On deck, bundles of dyed cloth that bleed color when a knife tip pricks the bale. Jars of oil with a shallower ring than the stamp claims. Ingots that look too eager to shine. The inspector's reed scrapes notes while the bosun tests a jar, spits, nods. The smuggler has excuses salted like meat. Storms, pirates, a broken tiller. The inspector has numbers, and they land heavier than oaths. He measures beam and draft, subtracts ballast, matches the cargo to the declared manifest from the last depot upriver. The shortfall is not a story, it is a figure. The crew separates penalty from theft, a fine that feeds the treasury, and a seizure that feeds an unpaid garrison 2 days east. By dawn, ledgers balance. The sun finds the depots opening their shutters. The patrol files a copy of the night's work and pushes off on time because the schedule is the law. Revenue swells without spectacle. Smuggling does not vanish. It starves. The patrol timetable, known and enforced, squeezes margins into something safer than theft. Compliance. Merchants accept the harbor credit office because it is faster than bribery and safer than being boarded at night with your paperwork half true. Local boatmen learn the drift of patrols and turn lookouts into legal pilots, paid by the depot for guiding inbound cargo across shoals no map dares to fix. The squadron costs coin and men, and it angers those who made a living in the fog between towns. But it buys 2 goods the land alone cannot: reach and velocity. A signal skims the chop faster than any courier can cross gravel. A cutter can arrive where a cart would founder and can tow order behind it like a net. Here's the lesson you feel in your feet when the deck steadies after a boarding. A navy is a moving tax office, not a fleet of glory, but a rhythm section for the empire's cash flow. Its drums are oars, its cymbals are scales. Its chorus is the quiet of a market that opens on time, because the night was fair and the rules are known. By noon, the patrol is a smudge on the horizon. The depot clerk counts out advances, marks repayments, raises the bar for graft by making honesty convenient. Inland, a paymaster opens a chest that would have been light last month and finds it exact. He breathes easier. A soldier laughs like a man with breakfast already bought. Wind presses the water into little hills, and the empire rides them on schedule. Policy needs a face you can shake hands with. In the throne room's glazed light, a decree reads like architecture. Each satrapy must seat a quota of local notables, no fewer than 3 in 10 senior posts, across revenue, justice, and public works. Names are proposed by city councils and temple boards. Approval arrives from Babylon with a seal and a salary. The point is not charity, it is collateral. When a noble's stipend depends on roads being passable and courts being trusted, rebellion threatens his own table first. Walk into a scribal school off the processional way. Lime-washed walls, a squeak of reeds on wax. 2 alphabets share the same room. On the left, a Greek tutor drills a boy to shave vowels clean. On the right, an Aramaic master insists the reed sit straighter in the thumb. Students swap benches by the hour. A Macedonian officer's son and a merchant's daughter from Susa practice the same tax form in 2 scripts and trade it to check each other's sums. When they pass, they earn a badge the patrols respect and the courts require. Bilingual clerk, admissible in crown offices anywhere from Sardis to Bactria. The empire stops being a shout translated badly and becomes a conversation that costs less to begin. Legitimacy is a ledger entry too. Protections for cults and local law are posted in markets beside toll rates. Shrines keep their offerings, priests keep their calendars, villages keep inheritance customs as long as they do not smother credit or starve the road crews. Cases begin in familiar courts and rise only when money crosses satrapy lines or soldiers must be moved. At Babylon, the appeals chamber houses 2 benches, Greek and Aramaic, with interpreters paid by the crown, not the litigants. The poor learn that imperial does not mean unreadable. The rich learn that imperial does not mean negotiable. Now, reframe a story we think we know. The Susa weddings once looked like theater, silken speeches, foreign brides lined like trophies, Macedonian officers tugging at collars. Recast them as a recruitment pipeline with teeth. Each match earns the couple a landed annuity near a fortified pole and a seat on a local board if they produce a child registered in both names and schooled in both scripts. Dowries include not just jewelry, but obligations. 15 days draft labor for road repair from the bride's clan, 10 days river watch from the groom's. Divorce dissolves the annuity. Widowhood transfers the seat to the eldest adult, regardless of sex, if she or he passes the bilingual clerk exam. In the 3rd year after the edict, a garrison captain with a Persian wife stands at a boundary stone, wet with rain, and argues for a bridge repair, not because it flatters policy, but because his in-laws cannot bring their barley to market without it. Policy has found itself a family. In a courtyard at dusk, a dispute smolders. A farmer from a hill village claims his cousin's widow cannot sell a field. Her priest says she can. Under the old rule, the argument might have fermented into faction. Under the new one, the local law, written and recognized, gives the widow first right if she can pay the assessed rate by the next market day. She produces a harbor credit tablet pledged against her barley yet to be sold. The clerk reads it, first in Aramaic, then in Greek, nods, records, stamps. No guards appear, no bribe is needed. The empire's face is a calm man with ink on his fingers. This is the 5th reveal, and the most counterintuitive to men who worship steel. Respect is cheaper than repression, not because people become angels when honored, but because honor lowers the price of cooperation. A noble who sees his nephew seated at a tax table defends the tax road. A priest whose liturgy is protected announces the levy from his own steps. A widow who can read her title stays and plants olives. Soldiers patrol less when clerks are believed. Auditors find fewer schemes when ambition has a home that isn't treason. There are scrapes. A quota is met with mannequins in one satrapy. The audit bites and seats are refilled. A temple claims immunity for a granary that is really a merchant's stash. A customs officer cracks the seal, pays the fine with his promotion. Progress arrives like a caravan, dusty, loud, but on time. By year's turn, names on payrolls look like a map, not a faction. The school's lintel is worn by palms that touch it for luck before exams. In the market, a petition changes hands without changing languages. In the council room, Greek leather and Persian silk crease on the same benches while a clerk reads the month's receipts aloud, both ways, and everyone hears the same number. The empire stops shaking when money learns a beat, not louder coin, steadier coin. Picture a paymaster under a lamp at Babylon, shoulders hunched over a chest that smells of cedar and sweat. The wick gutters, flares, steadies. He weighs tetradrachms to the attic standard. Each disc a little moon. He seats down with a clink that calls men back from rage. A clerk reads names, fingers brush silver. The room's fear loosens by degrees, like a fist remembering it can open. First, taxes you can set your year by. Land dues are assessed when fields are visible, after spring sprouting, not before, so guesses become numbers. Market and trade tolls fixed to thresholds everyone can count. By bale, by jar, by axle. Rates hang in markets and at ferry posts. They do not change with the collector's mood. The civil governor posts the quarter's expected take. The auditor posts the last quarter's real one. Where they match, trust thickens. Where they don't, the road crew finds fresh ditch diggers at a satrap's expense. Second, an arrears schedule that turns apology into procedure. If pay slips, it slips in tranches. 1/3 immediately, 1/3 within 10 days, the rest within the month, automatically weighted to the most exposed units. Frontier patrols before parade guards, escorts before garrison clerks. Each man receives a stamped chit for what is owed, negotiable for goods at crown rates at caravanserai and depots. Miss a second deadline and the council's tie-break rule snaps shut. No new campaigns, no new public works, until arrears return below the mark. Generosity is optional. Discipline is policy. Third, a minting cadence that mints confidence more than silver. The Babylon Mint melts captured plate and remints to consistent dies whose marks auditors can trace to a day and team. Assayers publish weekly tallies. False weight is a crime against the schedule, not just the crown. New issues debut after tax inflows, not before, so coin chase's work already done. The Mint also manages recoining windows, 2 weeks each quarter when clipped pieces can be traded for full weight at a posted fee, pulling damaged coin out of circulation before it corrupts tempers. Fourth, a seasonal cash flow calendar everyone can recite. Spring, land rolls updated, caravan escorts booked, ferries repaired. Summer, market tolls rise with movement, mint runs hot. Customs chests at river mouths swell. Autumn, harvest dues arrive in grain and coin. Arrears, if any, are extinguished before winter. Garrisons stock fodder and lamp oil. Winter, mint cools, audits ride, reserves are counted and sealed. Orders for spring repairs leave on the last fair day. The soldier in Sogdiana and the merchant at Charax both know when the year will pay them back. Back under the lamp, the paymaster hesitates at one name. Late last month, a fight nearly started. He lays down 4 moons, then a 5th. The arrears chit redeemed. The man's jaw shifts. He nods once, small and final, and the room exhales. You can feel a lesson settle heavy as silver. Predictability beats generosity. Overpay a week late, and you buy mutiny with a ribbon on it. Pay to the day, and you buy quiet for the price of a drum. By dawn, the chest is lighter, the ledger heavier, the garrison quieter. Outside, the city's clink resumes, scales, seals, boots. Each sound a tiny promise kept exactly on time. Years, 03, the beat starts. Sunrise in Babylon. The edict is spoken. 5 seats, 2 keys for men, 2 for money. Numbers break ties. Audits crack wax and shave lies. A clipped coin becomes a full payday. Tempers cool. Along the long road, 3 fortified posts go up. Ditches pull floodwater away. Relays hum. Ferries post, crown rates and glide. 2 camps tremble, Opis and a cold outpost. Pay lands on the day. Drums hold the line. At sea, cutters learn the coves. The first harbor credit tablet clicks on a counter. Tide and ledger keep time together. Years, 4, 7. Heart, purse, edge. Babylon turns into a desk that never sleeps. Susa breathes the cash. Inhale, exhale, steady. Ecbatana winters the plans. Patrols settle into a weekly round. Night boardings turn stories into receipts. Bilingual schools send out their first class. A widow signs a bridge order, and the bridge gets built. Susa weddings stop being theater. They become plumbing, land, duties, shared names. Raids probe the relays and meet fresh legs, not weary heroes. Sparks die small. Auditors lift a lid and find sand under wheat. Arrears clear early. One officer loses a mule to stall pay. The arrears rule snaps shut. He learns what a calendar can do. Year 8, the quiet begins. The road is stitched. Caravans carry fewer spears and more goods. Customs credit turns from novelty to habit. Schedules replace omens. An old hypaspis prunes his young orchard, drills twice a season, and hangs his spear where dusk gathers first. Year 9, the knot. Flooded river. A commander and a magnate reach for a depot chest before dawn. The lock wants 2 keys. The garrison is already solvent, advanced by the harbor credit office. Upstream, colonists drop trees into a choke. Relays reroute messages in hours. Cutters nose through chop. An auditor spots a forged flourish and lights the signal. They try to buy speed and receive a schedule. The coup folds by nightfall. Year 10, the sound of order. Market shade. A trader counts jars and speaks in months, not guesses. A soldier oils a gate instead of sharpening a blade. A scribe reads a petition twice, in 2 scripts, and smudges neither. A bosun reads manifests by thumb feel, and goes home to a room that faces east. In Babylon, boys with reed boxes, girls with seals, veterans with clicking knees, auditors with scales, sailors smelling of pitch past the mint. No one bows. Everyone keeps time. Dusk. The ledger balances. The river taps the key like a metronome. Quiet holds. Start with the hardest voice in the room. Your officers will revolt. Answer it on a parade ground that smells of leather and lamp oil. A captain eyes the pay table, then the road to his uncle's estate. He does the math. Betrayal means losing his land annuity near a fortified post, forfeiting the surplus share that arrives when audits run clean, and gambling his hostage nephew kept in comfort by the council's rules. Loyalty buys him predictable promotion slots, arrears chits that spend like coin, and a seat at month's end where numbers, not flattery, decide the next move. The 2-key system means he can't drag a garrison with promises he can't fund. The harbor credit office keeps that garrison solvent even if he seizes a chest. He stares at the road again and stays. Not from love, from arithmetic. The opportunity cost of treason is higher than the thrill. Bactria isn't governable. Not without the spine. True. With it, watch a week unfold. Relays ping, escorts switch every segment. Veteran colonies pull patrols short and frequent, not long and heroic. An auditor rides in dusty and unannounced. A civil governor produces ledgers that match the road watch tallies. Forage is paid before speeches begin. A raider tests the line and finds fresh legs instead of raw bravado. Posted ferry rates instead of bargaining at knife point, and grain jars that weigh the same at harvest and in storage. The frontier still bites, but the bite is priced. Bactria becomes governable the way winter is survivable, with routine and stores. What if revenues slip? Then the calendar gets teeth. First lever, expenditure breaks snap. No new campaigns, no monuments, repairs prioritized by traffic, arrears cleared by rule. Second, emergency levy on high-value trade, modest, term-limited, posted in markets and depots the same day, collected by the customs grid that already knows every cove and axle. Third, draw on reserves sealed at winter audits. Fourth, bridge credit expanded through harbor offices against next quarter's tolls. Only when those fail does the mint touch purity, never silently. If coin must stretch, it does so openly, within a narrow band for a named season, and recoils to full weight on the calendar. Better a short, announced pinch than a quiet rot that teaches men to weigh promises with their teeth. Now the bruise we don't hide, a failed colony. Year 6, a post at a mountain throat above the Oxus goes in on soil that lies prettily in spring and turns treacherous in thaw. A flash flood lifts the ditch like a necklace and drops it crooked. A relay burns. 17 graves take shape under stones that clack in the wind. The council does not spin it into glory. The post is moved 2 miles to a gravel shelf. Families resettled first. Stipends doubled for 1 season. Road crews pulled from 3 satrapies to cut a new trench deep as a man's shoulder. On the old site, a marker. The names, the date, the lesson. Survey in winter, not in bloom. The line bends and holds. Realism is not a concession, it's insurance. Run the board one more time. Officers eye the door and stay for pay, land, hostages safe, and a surplus that only order can mint. Bactria snarls and is answered by short patrols, honest ledgers, posted tolls. A thin quarter arrives. The levy hums. The mint speaks plainly. The tie-break rule freezes ambition until the numbers climb. A post fails. The schedule absorbs the shock and learns. Nothing divine here, just screws tightened where they once rattled. A trader under market shade. He rests his hand on a stack of dyed cloth cool from the night. The toll slate above the gate names the price per bale. The ferryman across the river posts the same number. He no longer carries small bribes in a hidden pouch. He carries a stamped harbor credit tablet that spends the same in 2 towns. Escorts change at each relay like clock hands. 10 fresh riders arrive, 10 ride back. Nobody argues. He counts months instead of omens. Sardis after barley, Susa before floods, Charax on the waning moon because the cutters pass then. A clerk reads his manifest in Greek, another in Aramaic. Both nod. His world has 2 tongues but 1 rhythm. Profit is no longer a gamble. It is a calendar, a soldier at a frontier strong point. The gate sings when oiled. He keeps a short kit ready. 2 days' grain, a mended sandal, a spear he hopes to never throw. Patrols run out and back by the hourglass, not the horizon. Pay hits his palm on the day. The arrears Chitty hated once is now a story for new recruits who don't believe him. There is a small tree behind the post, a gift from a veteran colony down the road, and he waters it at dusk. When raiders test the line, the horn calls 10 men, not 100. They ride, they return, they sleep. He has stopped rolling dice with his temper. He is not less brave, he is less wasted. A scribe in Babylon's light. 2 scripts, 1 desk. Petitions arrive in pairs. He reads both without a pause and stamps the one the law can carry. Numbers are his weather. Customs tallies, ferry takes, mint reports, arrears at 0. The chief scribe steps past with the same calm he once faked. When the council meets, the tie-break is not a voice. It is yesterday's totals in a cedar coffer. He closes the shutters against noon and hears the city's quiet machinery. Scales, seals, boots, keeping time. 3 lessons to carry forward. Clarity beats charisma. Write the rule first, then find men to serve it. Succession named, powers split, tie breaks public. Loyalty becomes cheap. Incentives outfight intentions. 2 keys, rotating seats, surprise audits. Ambition bends into service because service pays better. Logistics decide legitimacy. Paydays on time, roads stitched with posts, a navy that doubles as a tax office. Order begins where schedules meet need. Now, return to the opening table. Dawn again. The same clerk, older by a decade, sets a coin on the scale. It doesn't wobble. He draws a line. The columns meet. The seal rolls once across damp clay. Bull, lion, eye, and bites clean. Outside, the river taps the key like a metronome. A cutter's oars answer. A relay bell answers that. In the veteran colony beyond the gate, a child counts hoofbeats and gets the number right. In the market, the trader lifts his bales. In the fort, the soldier waters the tree. In the office, the scribe files a ledger that will be read the same way tomorrow. The empire does not shout. It keeps a promise. Then another, then 1,000 more, until quiet feels like strength. In the end, nothing miraculous happened. Just small screws tightened where they once rattled. The map holds because the calendar holds. Wars were not won. Drift was. And where thunder used to stand, there is a steadier music. Coin on scale, seal on clay, boots on time.